introduction here and to explain the purpose behind today. Now we are recording. Yes? Yep.
No, I don't see that.
Not yet. Okay. Yes, we are recording. Rachel's doing that, Steve. I'm going to put it on full screen here. Well, let's do our introduction first, and then we'll switch over. Every year in May, as most of you know, we hold Media Day at the EOC. It gives all of you a chance to test your equipment and to get current contact information with Steve and myself. And we go over the year's hurricane messages. Well, this year's obviously very different. And we're going to be explaining to you what the county's plans are and what the public's plans need to be as we ramp up for hurricane season in the COVID-19 era. So thank you, Chief Lischauer, for being on hand and agreeing to the virtual format here. And thanks to everybody who's in attendance this morning. We're going to try to keep this relatively brief, but there's a lot of important information to go over, and we truly, truly appreciate your role, our friends in the media, in helping spread these important messages. One of the key takeaways today, you're going to hear us say it multiple times, is that people need to have several plans this year for hurricane season, whether they're sheltering in place or planning to evacuate. And we want them to have multiple plans of evacuation, places to go, people to stay with, and the public shelters have got to be the last resort for obvious reasons, but we'll go over those as well. So with that, Steve, any other introductory words before we get started?
No, I don't think so. What you alluded to is most important, that this year the messaging we are putting out to the public is going to be so key because of the sheltering restrictions and the safety of the citizens. So we do thank all our media partners, and you are so important keeping the citizens informed of not only what emergency management's doing, but entire government is doing. So thank you all for attending today.
Yep. All right. So with that, we will enter our full screen of our presentation. I think most of you know who Steve and I are. We'll dispense with the introductions beyond that. So in Manatee County, we have transitioned, as many of you know, to a results-based approach on many of our operations. And so the goal today is the results we're looking for is to really get the word out to all of you so you can help us get the word out to the public. And you'll notice some key icons throughout this presentation. The exclamation point are going to be the most important things we would like you to take away. And the light bulb are the feature story ideas. So we'll go into more depth on each of those when we get there. Most important things this year, like many, are know your home, know your level, have your evacuation plans, and have evacuation. We'll offer some evacuation tips as well, and then we'll talk about some more features, ideas for later in the summer when things slow down a little bit. Steve?
Well, as you all know, starting on the 1st of June through November is hurricane season. We just did a quick comparison chart. As most of you already know, it's going to be a little more active season. And what's kind of concerning is we've already had 2 named storms and we're not even into season. So that's a concern for everyone. And as we've been saying for the last couple of years, is only takes one. The Panhandle, if you look at that, Michael, how far in the alphabet that was, but it only took one. And that's what we want the citizens to be aware of, is not worried about whether it's going to be 10 storms, 9 storms, or whatever. It's to be concerned about that one that is headed to us and to be prepared. So as we continue on, just some things we want to talk about. This, as always, having a disaster kit is so important. And the thing I want to remind everybody for, and hope that you will help us get the message out, now is the time to stock up. As we've seen for the last several months, the grocery store shelves have been empty on many of the things. So now is the time to stock up. I hope that you're going to push out that starting tomorrow through June the 4th is the tax-free holiday on hurricane supplies. But if we go down and look, that it's, we used to talk about having a kit ready for 3 to 5 days. Now it's most important a week or more, a week or more. And then the next bullet is take your prescription bottle. And what I recommend people doing that, I'll make a quick example. In Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle, when people evacuated, they evacuated their homes, just took their pills with them. When their homes were destroyed, their doctor's office was destroyed, and their pharmacy destroyed, how do you get a prescription without that prescription bottle? So that's a key thing that we want the people to know. In addition to all these other things that are up here, a couple others at the current time is for the folks to bring a mask with them if they have gloves, and also their own hand sanitizer. So next slide, please.
If I can just add on to that before we move on, as I was talking to another reporter yesterday, and just to reiterate, get the shopping done now during the holiday, during the tax-free holiday. You'll avoid crowds. It's a chance to save a little extra money, but you'll also beat the rush. And as Steve alluded, there has been a shortage on cleaning sanitary supplies. So look out for those things now, get them now. I think the state's saying, Steve, do they advise a 7-day supply if you're going to shelter in place?
Yes, at least.
So water, non-perishable goods, and we'll talk in just a minute about the shelter plan, but it's imperative that you get your shopping done sooner than later.
Everyone loves their fur babies, and we do have to take care of our pets. And the one key thing that Sarah Brown, the Chief of Animal Services, want the people to know is when they put their pet in a carrier, that carrier is big enough for that pet to stand up and turn around. If they're squeezed in there, that's a torture to the animal, and we want to make sure they can turn around. Also, on the slide that people need to bring, whether they go to a shelter or a friend's house, is bring food and water for their animal, and also to make sure you pick up after your animals. So they're very important. We have to tend to them just like we would tend to ourselves or other family members. Next slide.
Notice our light bulb icon here, Chief Brown, who I know you're all familiar with, would love to spend some more time talking about this stuff. I told her we'd touch briefly on it today for Media Day, and anytime you guys want to coordinate and do a feature on pet prep, she knows that topic inside and out. Another idea that she asked me to pass along was not to tether your pets to a tree. That's something you see a lot of times in severe weather. People will just tie their dog or their cat to a tree as they head for the hills. But not only is that illegal, it's also inhumane. And if their floodwater is rising, your pet's not going to be able to get to higher ground. So definitely a reminder. Include your pets in your evacuation plan, and if you're not able to take them with you for plan A, then you need to have a plan A for the pet itself. Make sure it's got a safe home to be at while you evacuate.
Just a general preparation of homes. Know about trees. If a tree is near a home or a mobile home, that tree could come across that home. But the big thing is securing the yard and outdoor furniture, because that gas grill or that chair in your yard, if you do not pick it up, could be a projectile to a neighbor. So that's so important of preparing your home, shuttering it, and picking up the debris.
Yeah, so another message to emphasize, our utility department sends those alerts out with the water bills to remind people to do their yard cleanup now, and pruning of big trees and limbs, palm trees, things like that, so that you're not scrambling to do it on those days when we're in the projected cone. You're getting other things done during that time. This is one of the very first things that should be done springtime, and definitely before any storms approach, is try to get that yard preparation complete well before a storm.
Okay. We evacuate for two main reasons. One is the storm surge, common evacuation levels, A, B, C, and D. We will, later in the presentation, show you a great tool for the citizens to learn what level they're in. We do have new hurricane guides out this year that is also accessible online, that they can have some helpful hints. And obviously it doesn't matter what zone someone lives in. If they're in a manufactured home or a mobile home, they're always in level A to evacuate. Next slide. The big message this year is to know your home. We've passed this information out prior, but knowing your home is so important, because as we saw in Hurricane Irma, people that did not need to evacuate did. So they took up either space on the road or space in shelters, not allowing others. So this particular slide lays out under Manatee County building codes 3 levels. So if the home was built after 2012, the code is 150-mile-an-hour wind, which is a high category 4. From 2002 to 2012, 130-mile-an-hour wind, which is a good category 4. And then before 2012, a category 2. So it's so important to know the construction of your home. Those are one of the top messages this year we're trying to impress upon the citizens. Nick?
It's really going to be the probably, would you say, 70% of the homes in Manatee County can withstand strong winds. It's flooding. Yeah, that's more of the concern. So we'll show you the demo here in just a minute to show you where your evacuation zones are, or excuse me, your flood zones, and the year that the home was built. So a lot of homeowners may not be aware of the strength of their home, and we'll show you based on this chart how people can get a better idea of whether their home can withstand a strong storm.
Next slide. All right, these are 2 great links. If we could open the first link, Know Your Home, if you could help us push out this information.
So that was mymanatee.org/information, and were we going to use your address here, Steve?
Yeah, we can use 20. It's not showing up. 2101 47th Terrace East. You might need to switch screens.
Oh.
Yeah, Nick, it's not showing. It's just still showing the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Screen share that link.
Just a second. Okay.
Here we go.
So this is mymanatee.org/residents. Is that right?
Yep.
Slash
2101.
information.
/information.
Yeah,
Apologize.
2101. There we go.
2101.
Right.
47th Terrace East. Search.
Yep.
This is where you can send Steve your Christmas cards.
Yep. All right, so if you scroll down and you see the middle block that says public safety, and right where Nick has his cursor, come down just a tad. And evacuation level, we're at the public safety complex. One of the reasons we built here is we're not in an evacuation area, but it would show evacuation levels A, B, C, or D. So that is a great tool if someone wants to know where, which level they live in.
I'll bring open the various evacuation levels.
Okay.
Zones. Was there more information?
And then come down, scroll down a little bit more. And the next, if you go over to the right block where it says property information, you will see, bring it down about 3 segments, year home was built or year the building was built. So this was the year the public safety complex was built, but this would show the year going back to the prior slide of what wind strength that home was built. Now, if someone replaced a roof or enhanced their home, that's a different story, but this is of value if a person, say, had bought their home, didn't know, they can look at it. In this case, it's built in 2007. So it would be, if it was a residential, it would follow under the 130-mile-an-hour category 4 levels. All right.
Right. So this is giving you an idea of the wind strength of your home, and farther up, you're clicking on the evacuation level to determine whether you're in a flood zone, or excuse me, an evacuation zone.
And if we could go to the other link.
We were going to talk about sandbags and shelter location.
Yes,
That's okay.
right.
mymanatee.org/emergency info. Are you still able to see my screen?
It's coming up.
Yep.
This is all great work from the county GIS folks. And so if you see the little items that look like schoolhouses with flags, those are shelters. If it's red, that particular shelter is closed. And if it's green, that shelter will be open. We'll talk about shelters later, but shelters will be open in a phase concept. 4 to 6 at first, and so on. And then the little black bag is the sandbag locations. Again, if it's a black, it's closed sandbags. If it was red, that sandbag location would be open. That's great work by our partners at Public Works. Nick, you want to expand on that any further?
We, in recent years, are really trying to improve this reporting so that it's illustrating in real time what the shelter capacity is. If we have to open the shelters, we've got contacts within each building giving us real-time information as to the conditions within the shelters, and we're going to try to be able to report in real time how much capacity, for example, there might be left at Witt Elementary if it has to open up. With that, we'll go back to the PowerPoint. Can you see my links again?
No, we're still on the maps. There we are, and need to share screen. It's just showing us.
Okay.
There we go. All right, next slide, please.
So just to recap, these were the links that we were just showing. This one is allowing you to look up your address and see what year the home was built. And here is more for the actual storm event. This is for planning purposes, and this is more for during the storm to tell you where sandbag and shelters are available if that time comes.
All right, if you must, or if a citizen must evacuate, we're recommending tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. I'm sure all of you saw the pictures from Hurricane Irma, how it took double, triple, quadruple time going anywhere. The roads were clogged. So our recommendation, if you have to evacuate, to stay with a friend or a family outside the evacuation area, and or stay at a hotel in a safe zone. And a key to this is leave as early as possible.
So on a personal note, this was one of the key takeaways for me. Every year I learn a little bit more about hurricane season and what what families need to do to prepare. Like most of you, I'll be working in the storm, but my family would need to evacuate. And in years past, they've come as far as Louisiana, but the key takeaway that I'm reminding my family and friends of is this tens instead of hundreds of miles away. So I got to thinking about that, and we all know hotels book up safely, but I took a few minutes yesterday just to look at the Airbnb listings in our sister counties to the east, Hardy and DeSoto. There are literally thousands of vacancies with Airbnb, and so if people see severe weather approaching, that's what I'm going to advise my family to do is look at some of those short-term rentals further inland out of flood zones, and they'll be safe there. And you'll be able to return quickly instead of driving all the way to Georgia or, like I said, Louisiana. So that's a real key for me personally this year is to look within the community or not too far without it for a place to go.
Next slide. All right, this is going to be so important this year, and we're really trying to impress that shelters this year with COVID is really a refuge of last resort. It truly is, should be their last resort. They are located in public schools. Keep in mind that the closest shelter may not be open, because we do open in phases. We have 24 general population shelters. A key phrase we've said for years, it's a lifeboat, not a pleasure cruise. I think now more it's a kayak than a cruise, because it truly has to be refuge of last resort. A reminder that the citizens need to bring all their own supplies, cots, mattresses, etc. We are researching other safe, and I say safe locations, because of social distancing. The capacity of the shelters are going to be decreased, because we're going from, our plan now is instead of 20 square foot a person, it would be 60 square feet per person. So mathematically, our space will lessen, or our capacity would lessen. We do ask, if they do come to a shelter, as I mentioned earlier, that they bring masks, practice social distancing, and use hand sanitizer. But our key message is find somewhere else to go other than a shelter. A shelter is a last resort, and it will be a safe roof over your head, but a great concern is bringing in that many people in that close area. So Nick, do you have any?
Yeah, that's a message we are all familiar with. In normal times, shelters are uncomfortable at best. They're loud, they're crowded, they can be cold, and a lot of people don't like the smells and beyond. It's not a pleasant place to be, but at the end of the day, it keeps you safe from the elements, and that we could guarantee that you'll stay safe from the elements. There is no guarantee that you would stay safe from the spread of the coronavirus, despite distancing and face masks and hand sanitizers. So you're putting yourself at risk, end of story, if you are to attend or to come into a public shelter, and it has to be your last resort. For those, we'll reemphasize the message that you need not only one, but multiple plans to evacuate Manatee County if you need to, or your area, and stay with a family or friend who are outside of an evacuation zone. Shelter has got to be the last resort this year.
A reminder of our special needs shelter. These are the three main categories: oxygen dependent, electric dependent, and Alzheimer's dementia. The website here, manatee.org/needs. We almost beg that someone is in need of special needs that they register beforehand, so we can prepare and plan on how many people's coming. And again, even for them, it's going to be very important. We'll be decreasing capacity again because of social distancing. Again, masks for everyone, sanitizer. But if you have a relative or friend or whatever that are under these categories, please have them pre-register at mymanatee.org/needs. As always, we encourage our citizens to sign up for Code Red warnings directly from us. Something we just started a few months ago is texting Manatee Ready at 888-777 for short texts, updates and briefing. But Code Red is really used in emergency alerting. So keeping everybody informed.
Yeah, hopefully many of you have signed up for the Manatee Ready text alerts already. We're trying to, it's just another tool, you know, to get messages out to the public directly on their cell phones. And if they see a code red call coming in, it's got to be the most urgent kind of message. The less urgent things will come via the Manatee Ready text alerts. I think many of you already follow us on social media. These are our links where we will live stream updates, tweet the latest, a lot of prep tips. We'll talk about 311 here in just a minute, but in years past, we publicized the Citizens Information Center. It's a 7-digit number that's going away. It'll still work for the time being, but the easier to remember number for citizens with inquiries will be 311. We'll touch more on that in a little bit, but it kind of ties in with something that we were talking about earlier in the social distancing, and to show you another example of how serious we at the county are taking social distancing. Steve, if you could talk a little bit here about what the plan is for activating the Emergency Operations Center with very limited capacity, and then we'll talk about how that impacts our media briefings as well.
Sure. As many of you, I'm sure all of you have seen our EOC. It's a massive room with many, many tables, and at capacity, it probably holds over 150 people, but we're in the final of putting out our plan that in that room, if we must activate at each table of normally 8 people, we're only going to allow 2 people per table instead of 8. And around the walls where we have other chairs, it's an every 3rd location. And we use the term ESF. Those are emergency support functions. I'll give you an example. ESF 1 is transportation and public works, 4 is fire, 16 is law enforcement. And let me just use law enforcement example. That's the Sheriff's Office, Palmetto Police, Braden Police, Holmes Beach, Braden Beach, Longboat Key, Highway Patrol, etc. And like at all the other tables at Public Works, it's just not Manatee County Public Works. It's City of Braden, City of Palmetto, etc. For the transportation involves the state DOT, etc. So now we're only going to allow 2 people per table, and then they're going to communicate with their group remotely, just like we're doing. And we are putting in at every table sanitary wipes, hand sanitizer, but we have to greatly reduce that footprint for safety of our key people in an activation. So roughly figuring we're going to have maybe 25 people in the room of that size, where we normally would have 150 people, and do everything else remotely. For the last over 2 months, we've held our EOC briefings by the way of Zoom, and it's worked very well. And we believe that can continue on. So we need our key leaders there, but everything else will be Zoom, WebEx, and remote working. But we have to enforce the integrity of our leaders during an activation.
Right, and to that end, those of you who were with us during Irma know that we early on in that storm committed to a regular media briefing schedule. I think we were doing one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and if the time comes, if we're in a lockdown situation, definitely, or a full activation of the EOC virtually, then we're going to hold press conferences this way. We're going to do them virtually. It's become the way of the world to avoid large clusters of people, and it's going to keep us all safer, we think, and it's a pretty efficient way to do it too. So we'll open it up for questions here in a couple minutes because you probably have them. But for now, in the COVID-19 hurricane season, we're going to be doing our press conferences virtually via Zoom meetings. You or me take this one, Steve?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Yeah. This ties in a lot with the 311 call center that I referenced a few minutes ago. As all of you know, probably in March, it was actually March 11th. It was one of the last public events that we had before the shutdown and quarantine. We had a lot of you out to the Public Safety Center, and we covered the launch of our 311 Citizens Information Line. And it's going to really help relieve the 911 call center in urgent situation. So we know that we get a lot of erroneous 911 calls, people who, it's the first number they think of when they have a question for the county, but we're trying to reiterate, re-emphasize, and ingrain in people's minds that 311 is the non-emergency number. So if you have questions leading up to a storm, it's not an emergency, call 311. Obviously, 911 should be used in an emergency to report crimes, injuries, fires, accidents, serious medical problems, so forth. And you don't need to call 911 for some of the more routine things, directions and general questions, inquiries, or complaints. That's the role of the 311 call center. If there is doubt, err on the side of caution and dial 911 and they'll route you correctly. So it looks like I think we're closing in on the end of this. So we talked about how we're going to do virtual press conferences this summer, but we did want to show off a mark of pride that in recent months in preparation for hurricane season 2020, our emergency management team worked with our property management team and public safety to renovate the media room at the emergency public safety center. So can you see my cursor moving here, Steve?
Yes. Yes.
This
right
is
the fan did. Yep.
Yeah. So if you've been in the emergency in the media room, you remember this fan because it got very hot, and this was kind of the shotgun design. Well, they knocked out this wall. The speaker normally would stand somewhere around here, facing this direction. All of you with cameras and questions looking. So the speaker was looking this direction. Well, they've knocked out this wall, and now we have a podium here. Nice background and flags and much more space for those of us who are going to be working in the media room in the future. But we did want to show that off, but the in-person tour will have to come at another time. So I'm going to stop sharing our screen and open it up to questions. We will, right now, it looks like we have 28 folks still on the call. If you have questions, you could raise your hand and I will unmute your line, and Steve or I can chime in or get an answer later today for you. Don't be shy. Bueller. No, not seeing any questions. You get one? Oh,
Yes.
Yep, here we go. Where'd it go?
Two people.
Okay. Good morning, Leah. Oh, unmute. Sorry, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay, awesome. So I know Steve and I talked about this a little bit last week, but with these shelters and having to keep them as a last resort, people are still going to show up because they may not know where to go. So how many people are you going to be limiting it to in these shelters? Are you trying to keep it 50% capacity as normally as 100%?
I had a real hard time hearing.
Yeah, can you speak more into your phone, please?
Yeah, can you hear me better now?
Yeah,
That's
that's
a little
better.
I know Steve and I talked about this a little bit with the shelters being a last resort. People are still going to be most likely showing up. When you have to turn people away, how many people are you going to keep in the shelter? Is it going to be more like a 50% capacity instead of the 100% as usual?
Okay, I think I still have difficulty hearing you, but I think your question was dealing with capacity of the shelters.
Yeah.
We've been on conference calls with the state of Florida. We have been in conference calls with the Florida Emergency Preparedness Association, with the Red Cross. And the recommendation right now for a general population shelter is, I alluded to it earlier, is normally it's 20 square foot a person. Now they're recommending 60 square feet a person. So mathematically, what that does to our general population shelters is bring it down to 35.4% of its capacity. So that's why it's so important for people to find somewhere else, whether it's a Airbnb, a hotel room, a friend, or a family. And that's why we're looking at other safe locations, but that's what it is for general shelters. For special needs, it goes from 60 square foot to 110 square foot, and that is 54% capacity. So that's why we're really trying to impress Refuge, a last resort, and in all cases, we're requesting people to wear masks. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
Can I put it in a little bit different terms, because it can be confusing, Steve? If you're saying 34%, does that mean if normally we could host 100 people in a shelter, now it's 34?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, in true numbers, our shelter capacity was 36,842, and mathematically that brings down to 13,047.
So the situation, as you can tell, is gonna. You have to help us emphasize that message if the time comes, and today. Shelters have got to be your last resort, and you have to have multiple options to evacuate or shelter in place. Ryan, I'll take you off mute here. Morning, Ryan. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Cool. I joined late, so forgive me if I missed this part of the presentation, but I'm kind of wondering what you might tell someone who's concerned about finding supplies at the grocery store, and if hoarding is going to be a problem in this time when everyone's kind of stocking up at the same time.
Well, I'll start with this, and we are encouraging right now to go out and start shopping. As we've seen, if you go in a grocery store right now, some of the shelves are low. So start shopping now. Don't hoard, because we saw what that did with the start of COVID. But now start shopping, now start stocking up, and not wait for a storm to come around, because as the season progresses, I think it'll get worse. Nick, you got?
Yeah, Ryan, we did cover that a little bit before you got on, and it was just, we got the sales tax holiday, the hurricane shopping holiday coming up this weekend, and it's really a prime time to get your shopping done. In my experience around town, if I'm not able to find something at my normal shopping spot, I can usually find it somewhere else. So you might have to go a little bit out of your the normal beaten path to get what you're looking for, but there's not been a run on supplies. There's not a supply problem right now. the time to shop is before things get kind of chaotic, you know, and you definitely don't want to be in a crowded grocery store or shopping center when everybody's going a little silly trying to get all the same supplies. So get that done now, and when crowds are lower, especially at groceries and shopping centers.
And as my wife has told me, a lot of the stores are limiting. So it may take you several weeks. For some reason, soup, they're only allowing some places 2 cans at a time. So buy 2 cans this week, 2 cans next week, etc. And that goes back to start doing it now, because when it gets up to the storm time, it will be too late. So please help us push that message. Now above any other year is the time to start shopping. And that shopping, like I said, could take 2, 3, 4 weeks to complete your kit.
Thank you guys so much.
Okay. Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to mute you again. And R. Fernandez.
Hey, it's Rebecca with
Rebecca, hi.
So I know that you guys are encouraging people to make their own accommodations in terms of shelters, but for those that can't and will need to go to a shelter, has there ever been discussion of maybe separating the population that's at high risk of getting COVID and separating them from kids or the younger population, or is it going to be mixed?
We're going to make every attempt, and again, as we look at the different schools, there's no exact footprint of the 24 different schools. So we've been working very well with our school district partners. They are adding extra personnel this year too, and we're going to make every attempt to be able to use additional space like classrooms for smaller groups if we can, separate people. And again, that goes back to the square footage of what they're allowed, but we're going to make every attempt we can to keep groups or one separated. But then we get into the last moment of life safety. But yes, we're going to do every attempt to make it as safe for everyone as we can.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, the shelters can guarantee safe harbor from the elements, but not from the virus. So users beware. It's got to be your last resort. Anything else, Rebecca?
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah. Sam? Sam?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep. Hi.
All right, cool. So yeah, kind of going off of that last point, you know, I know when you go to shelters, you're expected to bring everything you need with you. This year, that's going to include masks, correctly? You're not going to be providing those for people at the shelter.
Well, we will have some, and as you know, supplies limited, but through emergency management, we have been trying to get procedural masks, hand sanitizers, and gloves. But as we all know, there's a limitation out there. So the more people can bring, the better it will be. And we've been trying to use a matrix of how many people would be in the shelter over how many days. So there will be some there, but we're held on being able to get for everyone. So that's why we're asking people to bring their own. A lot of people are making their own masks too, but we will ask everyone in the shelter to wear masks. But we will have some on supply.
You know, it's probably inevitable that people are going to look at what the shelter standards are going to be, but our hope is, with your help, that people hear this message over and again. They're not going to want to come to the public shelter like never before. They're not going to want to come to the public shelter. They've got to have a different plan in place. And so there's no guarantee that you'll be safe from the coronavirus inside a public shelter. There's
And
just,
you know, this is something we've heard from the state emergency management departments, is that they've been trying to backfill orders to make sure that they have their own stock for once hurricane season hits for the state. Is the county trying to do something similar with things like masks, you know, trying to make sure you have that back supply, so when this hits, you know, not just for those people in the shelters, but for our first responders, that you have enough?
Yes, we've been ordering, and but the key to it is there's not an overabundance of supplies out there. So that's a key. So that's where cloth masks, where they can be reused. We have ordered and have gotten in thousands of masks already for the shelters. But again, if we're looking at, if we went on the maximum number, even number 13,000, you don't want to use a paper mask more than a day if you're going to be in there for 3 or 4 days. So we're looking at trying to get, you know, roughly over 50,000 masks just for the shelter workers.
the workers, right? So that's another thing to emphasize here is any personal protective equipment that we're obtaining is, in some cases, well, you don't want it to compete against the first responders. They've got to have PPE in order to do their jobs. And there's no guarantee that there's going to be enough of those masks to go around if you show up at a public shelter. You won't be turned away, but there's no guarantee. There's just no guarantee that there would be enough masks for everyone.
Yeah, let me correct myself. That 50,000 is for the citizens, so 50,000 procedural masks. But then we're looking at upgrading for the workers, and we're looking at thousands of N95s. And if you see every day there's a struggle to get those in place, we have already reviewed of what would the next best thing be for the workers. Would it be a face shield and a mask, etc.? Because the supply out there is very limited right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Jay Heater, what do we got, Jay?
I was wondering if there's any kind of ongoing effort to find more shelters, maybe not schools, because obviously the capacity has been reduced so much.
Yes, I alluded to that a little bit earlier. We are researching other safe locations. So we are looking at other schools. We're looking at county buildings. We're continuing to look at safe locations that can house a quantity of people. And so that's a big task. But again, with that, think about a hall. If we're looking at 60 square foot a person, how many people can you put in a particular area? But we are researching, we are looking. We have people trying to think of, you know, because you got to think about evacuation levels. You have to worry about the construction. Are there windows there, etc. So it's just not just pick a location. And that's why we're trying to get the people to plan on somewhere. A big thing is looking at what we call non-congregate. It's where people would go to a Airbnb, a hotel, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands raised. We've kept you a better part of an hour now, so just in closing, please continue to help us get the message out. Personal responsibility is going to be a key factor this year, both in finding your own supplies, having an evacuation plan if you can, and multiple plans if you're able to, and looking tens of miles instead of hundreds of miles to evacuate if you're able to do that. shelter, or excuse me, Steve, any closing remarks before we
Just to echo on what you're saying, for if you would help us push out our important message, knowing their home, knowing their level, and having a plan if they do need to evacuate, where might they be able to go other than a shelter and be safe, and be able to start shopping and building that kit now.
I'll just, one more thing, and that is to say, we've been recording this. We'll put it on our YouTube channel in case there's any key points that you missed. But I'll also add this PowerPoint to our site, or share it with any of you who request it. So that's available on demand. To say that if there are any kind of feature stories that, for a slow news day or whatever, I can help you get in touch with Steve. We'll coordinate interviews with Chief Sarah Brown, Jake Sauer, any of the folks in public safety, public works, utilities. There's no shortage of stories to go around on the hurricane message this year. And we'll be reiterating a lot of the same information, but we'll help you drill down deeper if any of these story ideas piques your interest. Let me know, and I'll help coordinate those interviews when the time comes. All right, I think that's it. Leah, I also had a question, someone asking whether we can make the meeting available on Dropbox, if we can do that as well. Okay. All right, well, with that, I'm not seeing any other questions. We'll bring it to a close. Thanks to everyone who participated remotely. Steve, thanks for your expertise and guidance in all of this. And at any point, you guys, if you have questions, comments, clarification needed, reach out to Steve or myself, and we will get back to you very quickly, okay?
Thank you all very much for attending.
Stay safe.